It's still morning. It's 11:59 a.m. Can you hear me? Hi, Liz. Hi, Kenston. Great. I see you, Andrea. We are going to wait 2 minutes since Andrea set that time limit the other week. I thought that was great. We'll wait 2 minutes and see how many other people will join us, and then we will go ahead and get started. In the meantime, please take a moment to get some paper and a pencil or pen so you can take some notes. Also, don't be afraid to get your camera and take pictures of the slides as we go along. All right, so it is 12:02. Again, please get some paper and pencil to take some notes, and again, a camera if you would like to take pictures of the slides. And we will get started here in just a couple more seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, um, we are going to be covering habits 2 and 3 of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Welcome. My name is Karen, and I'm one of the training coordinators with Citywide Training and Development. We are part of the City of Columbus, the HR department, and we do training for, of course, City of Columbus employees. We also have people from the public who also come to our classes, and we certainly welcome them. In today's micro session, we're going to be covering habits 2 and 3 of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit 2, and part 1 that we'll be covering, is begin with the end in mind. Habit 3, in part 2, is put first things first. All right, let's get started with habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Oh, first, I'd also like to thank Kenston Henderson, one of my colleagues. He will be serving as our moderator and managing the comments in the comment sections. Please don't hesitate to put any questions and comments there, and we will certainly respond to you. So thank you, Kenston, for handling that portion of our micro session today. All right, habit 2. In habit 2, Stephen Covey asks us first thing to do a visualization experiment. So you're probably looking at this picture saying, what in the world? Rest in power, rest in peace. What's going on here? So what he is asking us to do is to imagine ourselves at a funeral. And it's our funeral. So, okay, don't panic. So you're not dead yet. We're all alive. But what he's asking us to do, he wants us to visualize and to think about what people will say at our funerals. So, for instance, what would you like each speaker to say? What kind of spouse you are? What kind of parent? Maybe a sibling? How would you want them to tell others about your life? That includes your friends or associates, not just work, but those persons that you talk to in the community. So definitely keep that in mind. And I apologize. I was just notified that the top of my PowerPoint is cut off. So I do apologize for that. And just a note, this slide deck will be available to you for if you request it, you can just email us and I'll give you that information at the end of our session. But back to our visualization experiment. So think about what you want these people to say about you after you're gone. But the good thing is we're not gone yet. So we have the ability to live up to those goals and those things that we would want people to say about us. So it means starting with a clear understanding of your destination. You know, who goes on a trip without a map? Okay, I know maps are old school, but or a GPS, although I would suggest printing out a map because, you know, there's just some areas where you're not going to be able to get GPS. But it means to know where you're going so that you can better understand where you are now so that you can take the steps in the right direction. So this exercise is to provide you the opportunity to prioritize your most important values. In this chapter 2, begin with the end in mind. Covey's concept is that all things are created twice. So as you see there on the screen, it says there's a mental creation, which he also considers to be a first creation, and then there's a physical creation that comes after that. So let's put it in these terms. You may or may not be familiar with computer programming. So you want to create a program that will accomplish certain tasks. Well, the first thing you're going to do is to write it out. What do you want this program to do? You're imagining what you want it to do. The second step is to start coding that program. And that's how Stephen Covey says we should live our lives. First, and again, thinking about our visualization experiment, we're thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm currently not living up to those things that I want people to say about me once my time on earth is over. But you have the ability to move forward and live up to those things. So it's the same thing as if you are responsible for creating an agenda for a meeting, for instance. One of the first things you'll want to do when you create that agenda may be to outline a list of items to be discussed. You may also want to, depending on your team or the people that you're dealing with, set times for those speakers. You know, whether it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you want to make sure that you don't run over time. You can also put on your agenda what goals you want to define, what you want to discuss at that meeting. And of course, there's usually a section or a time in the meeting where you can um, discuss off-topic items or put or discuss action items. So those are important as well. So when he talks about making a plan, he also talks about, he calls it scripting. So he asks, are you living your own plan or are you living someone else's plan? You know, as we go through life, when we grow up, we have family, we have associates, there's work pressures, there's our baggage from our past life, and then we may also have pleasures. So, all of those things we have to deal with in our lives. And what we want to consider is, are these items my own plans or are they someone else's? Because if you're living someone else's plan, it may be contrary to your own plans. So he says every part of our life is either a result of our own proactive design or someone else's agenda. Now, we covered habit one, be proactive, several weeks ago, and that is still available on our Facebook page. So if you'd like some reference to that, please be sure to go back and look at that video for habit one, be proactive. But again, it's very important to make sure that what you do in your life is what you want to do and not what someone else wants you to do. Because if you're doing what someone else wants you to do, you may not truly be happy. You might be that tiger mom, or you might be the child of a tiger mom who has imprinted on you, well, I want you to go to law school, I want you to be a doctor, and so on and so forth. But what do you want to do? That's very important. So to begin with the end in mind means taking charge of your first creation. So how do we move forward and do that? I want to ask a question before I move to the next slide. How many of you have a mission statement? Go ahead and put that in the comment section. I want to know how many people actually have a personal mission statement. I know it's not typical for people to have their own individual mission statements. We usually expect to see mission statements from companies, maybe your company has one or your department has one. But you can have a personal mission statement yourself. It focuses on what you want to be and how you want to achieve that. A personal mission statement is a living document. So, what do I mean by a living document? I mean that it's not a static piece of paper, it is dynamic. You can change it at any time. So, you're not locked in to those things or goals that maybe you set 10 or 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago. So, you can always go back and change and uh, update that living document to more accurately reflect what your goals are. He being Covey, also espouses writing our mission statements based on our center of beliefs. And he calls out four specific beliefs. So starting at the top, we have security. So security talks about how you feel about yourself, your self-worth. Who am I? Or who are you? What emotional baggage am I dragging along with me? Some of you all may know of Erykah Badu's song, Bag Lady. You are going to miss your bus dragging all those bags with you. So we need to check what emotional baggage we have. We need to look at our self-esteem in order to determine our security. Guidance. This allows us to determine the source of our direction in life. Whether you ascribe to a higher power or something else, you need to determine what is guiding your direction in life. We also have wisdom, and it's a perspective, your sense of balance. We need to have balance. We hear a lot about work-life balance. It's real. It's very important. We should have some type of balance in our life so that we can better understand how these interchangeable parts relate to each other. And then we also have power. So when I talked about scripting, we don't want to follow someone else's script. We want to take our own power and act upon that. We want to use our strength so that we can accomplish whatever goals we have written down in our personal mission statement. So does anyone have any questions or comments about habit 2? Well, if you don't have any now, no problem. You can always come back and review this session a little later and put comments in the box there, or contact us at ctd@columbus.gov. That's Charlie Tango Delta at columbus.gov. Moving forward, we're going to start talking about habit 3. Putting first things first. And this is the time management principle. So I don't know about you, but I try to, or I have evolved with my time management processes. And I'm always asking and asking other people, how do you manage your time management? Years ago, of course, before we had computers, most people would just make lists and write those things down. So we had our paper calendars. And then we moved into, some of you may have even had Franklin Covey calendars, where they started with the prioritization. Your first priority action items are A, the second being B, and the third being C. Now we have all kind of software programs. You have your smartphones, you have your computers, and we have those items to help us with our priorities. Let's talk more about priorities. So tell me if any of this sounds familiar to you. I don't feel in control of my life. Or maybe you're this guy who's extremely frustrated, where he says, I have too much to do and not enough time to do it all. And then there's this woman. She can't find balance between her life and her work. So she feels if I give too much time to work, then something is suffering in my personal life. And that can further frustrate you when you're trying to juggle or manage things in your life. But time management is an essential skill, and learning to master that will help you to be able to work, take care of your family. It may consist of taking care of the extended family. It allows you to prioritize and organize around what priorities that you do have. Stephen Covey gives us this time management matrix. So we have quadrant 1. So first of all, let me talk about our different axes, that is. So here at the top, we have urgent and not urgent. On the side axis, we have important and not important. So in quadrant 1, That's urgent and important. This is where you have fires to put out. When you come into the office, you may have a plan, but you have things that you have to do right now, which kind of throws you off your plan. Quadrant 2 consists of planning. It is not urgent, but important. So if we allow ourselves to plan, even when we have those urgent items that we need or those fires that we need to put out, we can still accomplish the other tasks that we have that's waiting for us. Quadrant 3 down here. Urgent but not important. So it's not important and urgent. And this is where we really want to use delegation. I know personally, I used to have control issues. Okay, I'm lying. I still do. But even with that, if there are things that you can, maybe it's at home, you can ask your spouse to handle some tasks that you had on your list, or your children at work. Use delegation to help take some things off of your plate so that you can better be able to plan and organize. And then we also have quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. He says here, eliminate. Um, when we think about things that we can eliminate, we call these time wasters. So I'll ask you, what are some things that you can eliminate? Or what are some things that you do when you come into the office that you do that wastes your time? Any suggestions? Well, some things that are time wasters, for instance, are checking your phone. We are so attached to our phones these days. We can't go, and I'm sure there's some research. I should have looked up some statistics on this, but on an average day, I believe it's something like we look at our phone multiple times an hour. That's a time waster. So we need to be able to control those things so that we can get back to those things that are important. So we're still talking about our time management matrix. How many of you have seen the video of her or heard about the video called The Jar of Life? The Jar of Life. Well, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend looking up that video. It's very short. It's just maybe 3 minutes long, if that. But in that video, step 1, where he talks about prioritizing, is where you have big rocks. So you want to put the big rocks in your jar first. So whether it's at the end or the beginning of the week, you want to write down important things that you need to do, such as meetings or studying. This helps you to remember and to know what some of those big rocks are at the end of the week. Thank you very much, Kenston. On average, American consumers now check their smartphones on average 52 times each day. Wow. Yeah, and it's probably more than that for especially for some of the younger generations. I'm not being ageist, but that's what the statistics tell us. And then in step 2, going back to the jar of life, making time. So you want to make and find time slots between those big rocks so that you know that you can get them done. You can do this by moving around some of those small rocks, some of those everyday things that aren't necessarily important. Step 3 in the jar of life is everything else. So in the video, they represent this by pouring sand in that jar, where you first have big rocks and then you have smaller size rocks, but then the sand you can pour in. That's everything else. It fills up the holes left by those other rocks. So again, I would definitely recommend that video if you have not yet seen that with reference to time management. But the heart of the time management matrix is quadrant 2. Remember, Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but important. It allows you to, as our bullet points say here, think prevented, preventively. How about that? Say that 10 times. And to deal with things that aren't urgent but important. So if you're able to plan, you're not always on edge thinking about what I need to do. You can simply look at your plan and execute that plan in a time that is convenient for you. So I have a quiz. That's right. Not too cool for school, even though it's just about summertime. But this quiz one, I want you all to think about this. What is one thing you could do that you're not currently doing that if you did on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? Take a moment to think about that. If you want to share it, please do put that in the comment section. But, if it's personal, don't worry about it. But I think we all have that one thing, probably more than one thing, that you could be doing that you're not doing now that if you did do would make your life a little more organized and you might actually get more done. Okay, so that's quiz question number one. I have a second quiz question. What one thing in your business or professional life, and I'll add family life, can you add that would bring similar results? Because while Stephen Covey's concepts are often applied towards our professional sphere, it also applies to our families as well. And getting your family involved in what they're wanting to do. I see you, Andrea. Sleep at least 8 hours a night. I'm with you. I'm with you there. So that, again, that could be on our dynamic plan. 5 or 6 isn't bad, but 8, of course, is the ultimate. If you can at least get 8 hours a night, that would be great. Self-care, absolutely, Dreama. I hate to admit, wait a minute, what is this, 2020? My New Year's resolution in 2017 was to get more regular massages. Well, here it is 2020, and I've gotten maybe 2 in that 3-year time. But I know when I do get those massages, I feel so much better. Whatever it is that you do for self-care, you should make time for that. So, and I'll say this as well, even though, yeah, I'm facilitating Stephen Covey's principles, every time I open his book, it is so contemporary and it's a great reminder of those things that I could and should do to make myself a better person. So that's still on my list of goals. Well, here we are at the end of our presentation of our micro sessions for Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. And habit 3, put first things first. And I have a quote here from Stephen Covey. He says, effective leadership is putting first things first. Effective management is discipline and the discipline to carry it out. So if you have any other comments or questions, please feel free to put that in our comment section. We'll be checking the comments even after we end our session today. And here is the book. I got this book back in the late 80s. I actually had it as part of one of my classes. And again, every time I picked it up since then, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. That is something that I need to do and that I can apply to my life today to make it better. So if there are no other comments or questions, at least at this time while we are live, I want to thank you for joining us today for our Citywide Training and Development micro session on habits 2 and 3 of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you're interested in a condensed copy of this presentation, please don't hesitate to email us at ctd@columbus.gov, and we have the address right here. Make sure you put in the subject line habits 2 and 3, and we'll get that emailed out to you right away. Kenston, I have a question for you, if you wouldn't mind. Do we have a session next week that we can tell folks about? Sorry, I should have that. Look at my schedule real quick. Today is the 11th. Yes, on June 18th, we have a session on mindfulness presented by my phenomenal colleague, Andrea Williams. So look forward to mindfulness on Thursday, June 18th. And then coming up on June 25th, we have a session on branding, again, presented to you by Kenston Henderson. Thank you very much, folks, and stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, and enjoy this beautiful weather that we are now having.